to everyone. Warm welcome to those who are joining us for the first time today. We have gone through the first 7 verses of the chapter 5. The first 7 verses speaks about spiritual practitioners who are at the various levels of spiritual development. A beginner is known as a yogi, a little advanced seeker is known as a sannyasi, and an evolved spiritual seeker is known as a jnani. Now, the next set of verses, verses 8 to 12, he talks about how these 3 seekers, which is a yogi, sannyasi, and a jnani, how do they go about relating to action? See, throughout the Shastras, the concept of spirituality has always been with relationship to life. The problem is people have misunderstood Vedanta to be an aspect of truth which is divorced to life. In fact, there is no element of truth, or there is no element of knowledge in this entire study you would find which has no relation to your life, which has no relation to your current situation or your challenges. It has a perfect solution to deal with your challenges, to help you sail through your life, and it has nothing divorced to life. You must understand that. So it is interesting how people at different level of wisdom, how do they relate to action? Now, before I explain the concept, get into the verse, it's important to understand the concept of attachment and detachment. That the concept of attachment and detachment, it is usually understood to be a physical discipline. Many people believe if this philosophy is advocating to live a life of detachment, it is expected for us to practice the detachment from a physical perspective. And people misunderstand that detachment is a physical quality which would necessitate you to separate yourself from your near and dear, to part with your possessions, that which you're very dearly holding on to, and in the belief or the perception that by parting yourself physically from these possessions or the things that you hold on to, or the relationship that you have established with the world, you have to separate yourself from them to practice that concept of detachment. It is a totally misunderstood concept. The concept of attachment or detachment is not physical. It's purely a mental attitude one carries in life, irrespective of where you're placed. So you could be in the marketplace, or you could be in a spiritual environment. It doesn't matter where you are placed in life. It is what relationship you have with whatever you are relating with. So I could have a spirit of attachment to whatever I deal, or I could have a spirit of detachment. So if I maintain a spirit of detachment, a person is said to be a spiritualist. The moment you establish a spirit of attachment, you are a materialist. Now, it is important to understand the very famous law. We often keep reminding ourselves, the law of attachment. Again, as I'm saying, it is a mental quality. It is not a physical attribute. What is the law of attachment? The law of attachment is, as you think, so you become. Whatever your thoughts are, wherever your thoughts are going, whether be it they're governed or ungoverned, whether the thoughts are going on their own accord without being policed, or they are going with a specific direction given, you're giving a specific direction to them with a higher faculty, Irrespective whether your thoughts are going consciously or unconsciously, wherever your thoughts go, you develop an attachment to it. That is the law. As you think, so you become. And it's important to understand a human mind can never remain without attachment. So it is inevitable that you must develop an attachment to something or the other. It's impossible to live a life without attachment. Firstly, we are saying attachment or detachment is a mental attitude. The attachment we have defined is a thought process. As you think, so you become. Now, what we are further saying is whatever you are attached to, you become the very object of your attachment. Whatever you're attached to. As I've said, as you think, so you become. What happens? Whatever you're thinking of, you become exactly whatever you're attached to. Thereafter, whatever happens to your object of attachment happens to you. You also will be subjected to the same undulations, the same consequences, whatever your object of attachment is subjected to. Example, a mother is terribly attached to the child, and if the child is not well, you would not find the mother is not her normal self. She goes through so much so that she herself becomes sick. It is so much identification the mother has got with the child. The mother becomes sick when the child becomes sick. If you're attached to your car, you become the car. If you're attached to your money, you become the money. If you're attached to your name, you become the name. If you're attached to your business, you become the business. So if your business goes through up and down, you go through the ups and downs. If somebody is tampering with your name or reputation, it hurts you terribly. Very dearly it hurts you because you're attached to your name. Now, all the scriptures are saying is you must learn to live a life with a spirit of detachment. And that degree of detachment differs from which level you are practicing. So how does a jnani live a life of detachment? How does a sannyasi and how does a yogi? Now, in the first 7 verses, he spoke in the order of a yogi, sannyasi, jnani. From 8 to 12, he talks in the reverse order. He talks first of a sannyasi, of a jnani, then a sannyasi, then a yogi. It's very, very interesting. But you will understand this concept better if you are able to relate to the concept of attachment and detachment. Now, as I've said, we all have developed attachment to. Now the question is, why does one develop an attachment to anything in particular? Why does one develop an attachment? And I look at you, each one of you have an attachment to something in particular. It's very difficult for me to say what you're attached to, but you know deep within what you're attached to. But the question is, what's the question? Rajima, what's the question?
Why are you attached to what you're attached to?
Why do you develop an attachment to whatever you're attached to? Why do you develop an attachment? It is not because of vasanas. So let me get that right. Vasanas and desires are not the reason. Just because I have a vasana for something, that doesn't mean I must develop an attachment to it. Why does one develop an attachment? Because of an emptiness which is felt within. Very true. You may ask me, sir, what is wrong in developing an attachment? The problem is wherever there is attachment, there is a degree of suffering. You must understand this. Attachment causes sorrow and suffering. The only way you will find joy in life is by living a life of detachment, is separating yourself from it. So you want to breathe that joy of life, you want to enjoy life in and through all what life puts you through, you must be detached. So much so, don't we say, oh, what a beautiful tragedy. We go and watch a tragic movie and don't we say, oh, what a beautiful tragedy? How were you able to enjoy a tragedy? Because you have detached yourself from it. You're able to understand it from a distance, observe it from a distance and see the drama. So the question is, why does one develop attachment? Siddharamanji?
You become attached to children because you get infatuated. You become attached to wealth because you feel possessions, because you become possessive. Same way you get attached to objects because you get addicted or slave to objects.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, Tinkima?
So somewhere we may believe that that particular person or that particular thing completes us.
So there is a certain mental association, you feel that there is as somebody said, there's a void within, there's an emptiness within. And that association creates a certain amount of fulfillment within. That's what you say?
Yeah, so then it's about why am I attached to A and not to B? Because B does not give me, does not complete me in any way, but A may have that something which I lack. So my association and attachment, that sort of makes me feel, or I start believing that that makes me feel complete. I don't know.
Yeah, you have a point there. See, if you get to the very basis of attachment, the reason why one develops attachment primarily is because there is a void. There is an emptiness within. Second is because your thoughts are constantly going outward. And your thoughts would, when they go outward, you are seeking immediate comfort. You're looking for immediate pleasure. You want immediate solace. So whatever gives you a certain amount of comfort or convenience and gives you an immediate pleasure, you develop an attachment to. So attachment is an effect of your wrong relationship with the world. And why does one develop is because whatever gives you immediate pleasure, you get addicted to, you get attached to. In fact, in the course of life, you're getting attached to, sadly, we have developed attachment to everything. See, wherever your thoughts go, you have developed an attachment. Where does your thoughts go? Wherever you find a certain amount of satisfaction, a joy, or a happiness, you develop attachment. A child gets a new toy. A child is attached to the toy. You can't tell a child, why are you so attached to the toy? Can you? Can you philosophize with a child? You only feel sorry for the child. Until the child gets another toy or it's distracted with something else, it is holding on to it as if its life depends on it. That kind of possessiveness, that kind of obsession you have towards the things and beings of the world. So the text is encouraging that from verses 8, how to live a life of detachment. Okay. Now let's chant verses 8 and 9 together. We'll chant it once only. Okay. Naiva kinchit karomiti yukto manyeta tattvaved pashyan shrunvan sprishan jignan ashnan gachan swapan shwasan pralapan visrujan grinnan unmishan nimishan api indriyanindriyartheshu vartanta iti dharayan. In fact, these two verses chanting is a little tongue twister. You will find that the words are so packed and you need to get hold of it. Pashyan, Shrunvan, Sprishan, Jignan, Ashnan, Gachan, Swapan, Shwasan, Pralapan, Visrujan, Grinnan, Unmishan, Nimishan, Napi. It is beautiful, but it's the terms convey something very basic. Can we have the translation, please? Now, verses 8 and 9 are chanted together because there's a thought flow. Now, what he says here, he's talking of a jnani. A jnani is an enlightened person, a man of realization. So what is he saying? I do nothing at all. Naiva kinchit karomiti iti. I don't do anything. United with the self, the knower of truth thinks. This is how he thinks, that I do nothing at all because of his union with the self. Seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, going, sleeping, breathing, speaking, releasing, seizing, opening and closing the eyes, he is convinced. The senses move among the sense objects. The senses are moving among the sense objects. But what is his notion? I do nothing at all. One of the most beautiful statements and very difficult to understand what they're coming from, where they're coming from. Okay, sir. Can we have the screen back, please? Now, I don't know whether you all are in tune with what is going on. Are you all with me? Right. Now, when you go and ask electricity, what is the stance electricity would take to all that it is enlivening, right from the doorbell to every gadget that's plugged in and every gadget that's functioning in the house? What is the attitude electricity would take to all these gadgets and all the multifold functions? If you ask electricity, are you producing the sound? Are you producing the air conditioning? Are you responsible for boiling the hot water, the water? Are you responsible for the refrigeration? Are you responsible for the luminosity in the light? Are you responsible for the breeze in the fan? Are you responsible for the clarity in the picture in the television? Are you responsible for all that is happening? What would electricity say? I do nothing at all. I am doing nothing. It is there and in its presence, everything bristles into activity. It is that sentient principle which gives sentiency to all this per se insentient dead matter. These equipments, these matter has no life in it, but it gives life to it. That's about all, isn't it? There's no life. In fact, one of the beautiful concepts, it always staggers me, it always amazed me. There is no life inherent in matter. There is no life inherent in spirit as well. But when spirit comes in contact with light, there is, comes in contact with matter, there is life. Like there is no, I repeat, there is no life inherent in spirit. There is no life inherent in matter. But when spirit comes in contact with matter, there is life. Just as there is no light inherent in electricity, there is no light inherent in the bulb, but when the light comes in contact, sorry, when electricity comes in contact with the bulb, there is light. So Atman is just that life-giving force. It lends itself, it gives life to everything. Now I see every one of you are full of life. Your expression, there is expression in you. The Atman in all of you is the same, isn't it? The consciousness is the same. But what makes each one of us different is because of the different vasanas. Like the different gadgets in the house, the refrigerator is different to the air conditioner, is different to the heater, is different to the fan, is different to the bulb, is different to the doorbell. All the gadgets have distinct characteristics, distinct nature, distinct aspects to it, which has distinct performances. But the electricity is one and the same, isn't it? Exactly the same way, the different beings have different vasanas, different characteristics. So all your actions belong to Ushama. All the actions you perform belong to
your soul.
Okay, I go to the air conditioner and ask, the quality of air conditioning, does it belong to the air conditioner or does it belong to the electricity?
Air conditioner.
I go to the refrigerator, you're very cool. Maybe the electricity is little powerful, therefore the refrigerator is very cool. Can you say that?
No.
So the attribute of refrigeration is the refrigerator.
Coolness. Yeah.
Coolness is the refrigerator. Now, similarly, I ask the attribute of, what was the question I asked?
Attribute of um, uh, a human being.
The various attributes of a human, whether you perform meritorious deeds, you perform actions with demerit, whether you perform actions which cause sin, which are auspicious actions, whatever actions you perform. So actions of an action are an attribute of
Your soul, or no, your mind.
okay. All right, I get what you're saying. Now let me engage others, those who are coming for the first time. Ma, I think you are calling yourself Pradeep Poddar, but can I engage you, Ma? What's your good name? Just a minute. I think you'll have to unmute yourself first, please.
Yes.
Yes.
No, I'm Mitali. I'm Mitali Podar. I'm taking this from my husband's laptop. So that's why the name is coming as Pradeep Podar.
No worries, no worries. So are you able to follow what we are saying? I think you're coming for the first time.
Yeah, no,
Right.
it's very good. It's very good. It's very enlightening. That's what I feel.
Right. Now, are you following the discussion? The discussion is, I said,
Yes, I'm
as
trying
I've,
to follow.
yes, I'm giving a simple example of all these gadgets have unique characteristics, yet the electricity is one and the same, isn't it?
Yeah.
Similarly, if you compare different living beings, even humans, no two humans are the same.
Yes.
So the question is that the different attributes, the various actions people perform, you attribute the various actions to what? To their vasanas or to the Atman or to the soul?
It's not by the soul. It's very individual's character. It's very individualistic character.
Yes.
That controls the soul is the same as you're saying, the electricity, but the performance by different performances the very characteristic to that individual.
Yes, very correct. So the different characteristics of the different individuals are highly individualistic based on their vasanas, isn't it? And Atman has got nothing to do with it. Now, the most important point we got to understand is, now if I ask you all, what is Atman? Srinivas Garu, what do you understand when I say Atman?
I say that is self-being.
I'm sorry, sir?
Self-being.
Self-being. How else can you describe the Atman?
Is a mute spectator of driving your life.
Something which drives your life, okay. Any further? Yes, yes, Ma.
The life-giving force.
The life-giving force, okay. Not wrong.
Imperishable, permanent, does not arise or does not die, is not born.
Now you see how poetic people will become now. The vocabulary will be very flowery. Not that you're wrong. In fact, that's the perfect definition. Something which never perishes. Self, the consciousness, the spirit.
Brahman.
Brahman, yes. Can I give it to, I think, Mithali, I think, is it, Ma? Yes, you had something to say, Ma? Yes.
Yes, I think it's your conscious. Your conscious for everyone. There is always a conscious when you are doing something wrong. It always warns you. So I think your conscious is the same, but your character or your sanskar makes you do all those things. I don't know how to explain it.
In fact, you're right. Your samskars, which is nothing but your vasanas, make each individual to do different things. Isn't it? Yes. But the Atman is the consciousness. You're right. Okay. I think, yes, Vijay Parsardi Garu, please.
Yeah, thank you. Namaste.
Namaskar.
See, in my opinion, all these names like Atman, Brahman, etc., is another form of some other names, and even like they're imperishable, and all these are attributes of what it is. But at the end of the day, what I believe is you know, when in a moment of silence, there's something that is constantly as an energy that's pulsating and vibrating and makes you, whether you're sleeping, whether you're this thing, there is a constant I that is reverberating within you, right? And the only thing that constantly that comes is I am, right? And that I am is what I believe is, you know, is an Atman. Of course, Brahman and consciousness, and these are other names, I believe. So this is what when you can only experience it. I don't know whether we can describe it. You know, that's the inner energy field, as Eckhart Tolle says, the inner
Yeah.
body.
Correct. So Vijayji, when you say it is that I am, the famous words of Moses, I am that I am.
Yeah. Neil Diamond.
And yeah, so you say when I believe or I think that Atman is I am, who is that I?
That's right. Who am I? You know, if you ask that, keep questioning, like Ramana Maharshi also says. So if you keep asking that question, who am I? And that silences everything, and there is an experience of an energy that one feels. You know, and that's what I said, that I is a vibration that one experiences, and there is, yeah, who's that I is the famous question, right? Who am I? So once, and everything stops with that question of who am I. At least that's the search. Who am I?
That's the search. In fact, that truth or Atman, in the verse, in the 9th verse, he says, I do nothing at all. When he says, I do nothing at all, here we are talking of a man who is enlightened, a jnani. So when he says, I do nothing at all, he is talking about the Atman. So one who reaches the state of realization gets into that realm of, he becomes that enlivening principle. He doesn't get involved or entangled into that which is being enlivened. So you must understand the two factors here. One is the enlivening principle, which is the spirit, which is the Atman, which is the consciousness, which is the reality. The scriptures or the masters say it is that I am. And then there is that which is being enlightened, which is the matter component, whether be it physical, material, emotional, intellectual. Now, when they say the Atman is not just the consciousness or the reality. They are saying, you are that Atman. Now, how many of us are able to convince ourselves to believe that I am not this, I am that? The capacity to be able to attune to that thought that I am that mighty self, I am that reality, I am that totality. And a man who reaches that state of consciousness announces to the world, Aham Brahmasmi, I am that Brahman. So when one reaches that state of realization, when realization is said to be that becoming, where one dissolves the individual self, the ego, and becomes one with the totality, the consciousness. Is like when the river merges with the ocean, the river loses its individual identity and becomes that en masse sheet of water. But till then it has an identity. Similarly, until we become one with the pure consciousness, we will all have an individual ego, the I and my. So when I use the word I, I'm referring to the individual self. But when a man of realization uses the word I, he means the consciousness. So the Atman doesn't do anything at all. What a contrast. In the 4th chapter, did we not learn Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavihi, Brahmagnau, Brahmanahutam, Brahmaivatena Gantavyam, Brahma Karma Samadhinam. where you're trying to put in that effort to convert every action into a yajna, isn't it? You're trying to convert every action to yajna. You're trying to divinize every action. You're trying to get rid of the lower, unite with the higher. So it is a humongous task. You put in such effort to unite with the self, and having reached the state of self, he says, I do nothing at all. Look at that. You do so much. It's a mountain of a challenge to reach that state of realization. It's not easy. It is definitely not easy to reach that state of realization. You will have to renounce everything. You got to renounce the very thought of renouncing. You got to renounce the very thought of realizing. You got to give up everything. The last obstacle between man and God, that very desire to realize, has to be given up. You have to have that phenomenal capacity of vairagya, to renounce the lower so that you get attached to the higher. You have to detach so that you get attached. So having put in that kind of extraordinary effort, not just in this birth, aneka janma, punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, how many janmas we have evolved to reach that state of realization. Of having reached that state, he says, I do nothing at all. It's just such a contrast to all that is happening. Now, what he's only trying to convey is that Atman is, okay, how do you understand? What is another word for Atman in the context of our discussion? I want you all to be in the context of discussion. Right before you, when I go into the verse, I'm explaining something. What is that one word synonym for Atman? One word. Alka ji?
Not allowing. Okay. I think it's Brahman.
Yes, Brahman. In the context of the study, in the context of the subject matter we are trying to convey, what is Atman or Brahman?
It's I. That's me.
I. That's you, yes. So I'll call you Atman from now on, not Alka.
Sure.
Huh? Atman in the form of Alkama. But what are we trying to discuss here? What is it that's being conveyed here? From the very beginning of the class.
I'm sorry, I missed a bit of the earlier, because I was not able to tune in because of Wi-Fi problems. So I missed a bit of the class.
Okay, you have the benefit of that. Okay, right. Let me ask Moshmi. Were you there from the beginning? हाँ, बोलिए.
I think consciousness.
From the beginning, what have we trying to convey? What concept are we trying to convey today?
You started with detachment and attachment, explaining
correct.
that.
ठीक है. Now, in the concept of purview of attachment, detachment, what is the role of the Atman?
Like Atman is separate from the individual self, and it is the individual vasanas that make us attached or detached. So Atman is just pure awareness or consciousness that, I mean, it's self-revealing sort of. I'm being revealed to myself through my Atman.
Now, how will you get to your Atman? What is that one word which conveys the synonym for Atman here? See, another word for Atman, because taking from what you have said, that state of realization is said to be a state of liberation. Huh? Opposite of liberation is bondage. Now, one gets bound to the world because of that spirit of attachment, isn't it? When you're attached to something, it creates a mental bondage.
Yeah.
The state of realization is said to be a state of perfect detachment, where you're liberated from all bondages.
Freedom.
Freedom. So once you reach that state of Brahman, you are truly liberated from all bondages. So is it not right to say Atman is a pure witness or a pure Sakshi, or Atman is perfect picture of detachment to the entire proceedings in the world?
Witness.
Witness. You get what I'm saying? So the one word I'm looking for, synonymous to the context what we're studying, Atman is a perfect witness. It is objective. It is detached.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to be detached to your life, if you want to be detached to your world, if you want to be detached to whatever activities, how should you develop the detachment?
Yeah, being objective, trying to be, it's not easy, but then trying to be an observer and just reiterating to the thought in myself that it is my sense organs, it is my mind, it is the body which are doing everything. I am just a witness to all these.
The question is, how does one inculcate that spirit of being a witness to everything that's happening? Where do you see, Ma, the only thing that is a witness to everything that's happening is the Atman. Everything else has a spirit, has a tendency of developing an attachment.
Yeah.
So if Moshmi wants to become a symbol of detachment, who is Moshmi? Moshmi is the individual ego.
Yeah.
Now, if this ego has to develop that spirit of detachment, it will all be possible by you identifying with the Atman.
Yes.
Remember the law of attachment. The law of attachment is as you think, so you become. So if you develop an attachment to the Atman, you will gain the qualities and attributes of the Atman, which is detachment. Thereby you will be detached to everything that's you're dealing with. You will gain the qualities of what you're attaching with.
Yeah.
Are you all following? Now the problem is we are not attaching ourselves to the Atman. We are attaching ourselves to the world. When you attach yourself to the world, what will happen? You will be subjected through all the undulations and the opposites of the world. When the world praises you, you get elated. When the world denounces you, get dejected. Why should you go through the undulations of elation and dejection? What is it that actually goes through elation and dejection? Rajima? What is it that goes through the fluctuation of elation, dejection?
Is it the mind, Guruji?
I'm asking you, you are asking me back. I'm expecting an answer from you, Ma. What is it that goes through the honor and dishonor?
It is our mind.
Never mind.
It's our emotion.
The emotion, yeah, Rajima, you're right. Srinivas Garu, it is the
Emotions.
emotion.
Our emotions. Which we
Emotion.
feel comfortable and uncomfortable from moment to moment.
Yeah, we at certain moments we're comfortable, certain moments uncomfortable. So when somebody honor and dishonor is at the intellectual level, joy and sorrow are at the emotional level, health and ill health, heat and cold are at the physical level. So when your ego is hurt, or when the intellectual arrogance, when it is fed, you get elated. When your intellectual arrogance is challenged, you get dejected. So when your ego when the intellectual opinion goes up and down, why should you go through up and down? Why should I say I am dejected? Why should you say I am not well? Why should I say I am unhappy?
Because we are attached to it.
Because of our unintelligent identification, attachment to the body, mind and intellect. So when your body, mind and intellect go through certain changes, you say,
I'm attached and
you would say, I am sick, I am happy, I am elated. But actually what's happening, it is the body, mind and intellect, they are going through the fluctuations, not the self. So as an individual, I have the choice of identifying either with the physical, mental, intellectual, or with the Atman. So the choice is with us. When you identify with the world, you go through you're subjected to whatever the world goes through, whatever the equipments go through. But when you identify with the self, you're not affected. You can experience this in relativity, you can experience this in absolute sense, where nothing external will affect you, should affect you. He who is not agitated by the external world. Why? You are no identification with the world. The world can praise you, the world can censure you. You have no affectation of the world. Why? You are developing, you are relating with it with a spirit of detachment. You stand apart and watch the drama going on. Absolute level Jnani, he says, I do nothing at all. The senses are moving among the sense objects, means I will go about doing a normal life like anyone, but I am perfectly detached. Because he understands all the actions belong to the vasanas, they don't belong to the Brahman, to the Atman. So the Atman is the inaction in action. Remember that? Did we not learn that? Jama, where did we learn that? Inaction in action. Shivaji, solunga sir.
Chapter 4.
எங்க சார் சாப்டர் 4ல நான் மறந்துட்டேன். ஞாபகம் இருக்கா?
ஏதோ கொஞ்சம் ஞாபகம் இருக்கு. அது கூட இருக்க கூடாதுன்னா
எனக்கு ஞாபகம் இல்ல சார், அது சொல்றேன். அனுபவமா, don't ask such difficult questions. இந்த மாதிரி கொஸ்டின் கேட்டீங்கன்னா எப்படிங்க? Yeah, please, can you explain yourself, ma, what you're asking?
We should be just a mute witness to anything that is without being affected by anything happening outside. But if we have to empathize or show emotions, how is it possible to empathize without any attachment, Guruji?
Okay. Now, this is a very pertinent question in the context that how is it possible to empathize or even identify with someone if you are not emotional, if you're not attached. See, in fact, as I've told you, when you develop an attachment, you exactly become whatever you're identifying with. So let's say a person has gone through extreme emotional trauma of having lost a near or dear. Okay. And they are, let's say they are very dear friends of yours. Okay. And when you come to know that your dear friend has lost someone very dear, let's say they lost a husband or very near and dear, you feel very sorry for that person because you know the family very dearly. You empathize, you're able to feel the loss. You go and you console that person, you give the strength, you give the necessary advice, you do all that is needed because the person who is affected has collapsed. has become, they've become immobile. They can't carry on doing anything. Yet life has to go on. So you help take charge of the entire proceedings, things, do all that is needed to be done. You sympathize, you empathize, you give them the strength, you give them the necessary advice, conviction that life has to go on, accept it, and you become very philosophical. Okay. Now, where you not been able to do that, have you done that everything? Yes, you have done all that you could do to be of help to that person. But have you lost the normalcy of your life? Have you also become paralyzed as that person is paralyzed?
No.
Why? Because you are detached. You are able to feel, your mind feels. The nature of the mind is to feel. But since you are objective, intellect says, I have got nothing to do with it. Since there is a certain, what is detachment? Detachment means is, I have nothing to do with it. It is that simple statement which is so powerful, which is so revulsive, we don't want to say it. But yet,
is it like, because nothing is in my control, I should be just like that?
What do you mean?
I can't do anything about it, anything to stop it or enhance this thing. So I better be detached.
No, it is not the question of your helplessness. It's the question of coming from strength.
Okay.
See,
that is the main difference. Yes.
Yes. See, you are, because you have separated yourself from that person, even though there is that emotion, there is a separateness, isn't it? There's a difference.
True.
You know, it's something like I'm holding a live wire. There's electricity passing through that wire. Imagine this is a live wire. I'm holding the wire, but I am not electrocuted because it is insulated.
Okay.
So it is the spirit of detachment that insulates you from all that emotions affect you. They are not because they've become completely involved or attached to the situation, they are affected. Now you are able to help because you are a little detached, but have you felt? Yes. You have a great feeling. You do all that is needed. You come back home, you have a shower, you feel sorry, your heart is still heavy. You have your dinner, you go to bed, your life carries on normalcy. I think nothing has happened, but yet you felt.
Yes.
It's not that you didn't feel.
Yes.
So you're only able to act rationally when your emotions are kept under control. Remember this. When the emotions get overwhelmed, that is when you become attached.
Thanks, Guruji.
So, but what happens when the problem comes one's own? Yes, you've been able to philosophize, you're able to help, you're able to advise. But when, let's say, 1/10 of that problem comes to your own near and dear, what happens to that spirit of detachment?
We have to accept it as karma, as a result of karma.
As long as you can,
it's God's will.
Yes, as long as you're able to rationalize it and accept it, then you will be able to deal with the situation.
Yes.
See, the difference you got to understand is plants, animal kingdom and the human kingdom, the plants have no emotions. They have they respond to certain stimuli, that's about all, but they don't give you certain emotions. So it's very okay to say the plants don't have emotions. Animals have emotions, and animals are a victim of emotion. Human beings have the emotion and are designed not to be affected by emotion. So a true spirit of detachment is to feel and yet not affected by the feeling, whether be it joy, whether be it sorrow, whether be it profit, whether be it loss. Why? Because you're identifying with the Atman, and Atman is that which is truly detached to everything that's happening. And a jnani here is absolutely detached. He is objective to the extent he says, I do nothing at all. Now, this is so high that we can't even understand how high this is. This is talking from a state of enlightenment. All right? The same concept, how a sannyasi deals with in the next verse is given. Okay? Let's chant verse 10. We'll chant it twice. Brahmanyadhaya karmani sangham tyaktva karoti yaha lipyate na sa papena padma patramivambhasa. Brahmanyadhaya karmani sangham tyaktva karoti yaha lipyate na sa papena padma patramivambhasa. One of the most beautiful, oft-quoted, very, very famous verses. He says, he who does actions, offering them to Brahman, Brahmani adhaya karmani. That word is very, very profound, beautiful. Brahmanyadhaya karmani. So he is performing actions all as an offering, as an oblation to Brahman. Everything is adhaya, is Brahman. Sangham tyaktva karotiyaha. He is performing them, as a result of which he has abandoned all attachment. Lipyate na sa papena padma patramivambhasa. He is not tainted by sin. Na papena. Just like a lotus leaf by water. A lotus leaf is in contact with water. It lives and dies in water, yet it doesn't get touched by water. It's not contacted by it. It's not affected by it. This is what a very, very famous analogy. So we should be like a lotus leaf in water. So where should we find peace and happiness? Everybody is trying to find happiness. Where should we find peace and happiness? Harishji?
In ourselves, inward.
Sir, I'm explaining the concept of Padma Patramivambhasa, which means he says it must be like a lotus leaf in water. Now, in the context, where should one find peace and happiness?
In being a witness, in being detached. While you are acting or involved, yet you are detached.
So the concept of
not touched by water.
Correct. So the concept of a lotus leaf conveys that you are in contact with water and not touched. Similarly, where should we find peace and happiness? The real spirit of detachment is while you are functioning, while you are acting, you should be able to find that peace and happiness. This is the principle that needs to be taught to people out there. Go back into your offices, in your homes, into your livelihood, and live a life and try to find that peace and happiness in the garb of your work. It is not the world, your wrong relationship with the world that causes. You develop an attachment and deal your life. You live a life of attachment is going to cause a lot of pain, a lot of agony. Remember to say this phrase right throughout to everything and anything that you do, anything you deal with anyone. I have got nothing to do with it. Have I got anything to do with my family? When I was born, did I bring my family along with me? Let's say tomorrow I'm on the deathbed, and I request to the family, I'm going to leave. Can you also come along with me? Nobody is interested. You say you want to go, you go. Huh? Nobody is going to come along with you. So I'm reminded of this Doha of Sant Kabir. Anybody? Harishji, you able to collect? Which is that?
The Khajur ka ped.
Khajur ka ped is more in terms of it doesn't, that talks about that it is of no use. No?
Correct.
What it says, the other Doha indirectly talks of it.
Why we remember him when we want him?
No, even that is not the context. No. जब तू आया जगत में जग हंसे तू रोए ऐसे करनी कर चलो तू हंसे जग रोए कबीरा तू हंसे जग रोए. What is he trying to say there? You live a life of such detachment that when you're leaving, people are in tears. They are missing you, but you are smiling because you have fulfilled the purpose of your life. You have lived a life to the fullest. You have achieved the purpose of life, which is to attain realization. Tu hase jagroye. So indirectly, Sant Kabir puts it very beautifully. So as long as you live a life of detachment, you will find you will be in that cocoon of that peace and happiness. So you deal with everything in the world from that cocoon of that peace and happiness. And that is possible when you say, I have got nothing to do with anything. And yet you will do because you have an obligation to do. If you don't understand that, on the deathbed, you ask your family member, come, you're most dear to you, maybe your wife or your child, are you going to come along with me? The truth is nobody's interested in your journey. You are in your journey, you pay your karma phal. Nobody is willing to share your fruits of your actions. You're born alone, you're going to die alone. You have got nothing to do with anything here. And yet you have developed such an unnecessary relationship with everything. And this is called samsar, bondage. Yes, Setharamanji.
Sir, this earlier you told a story of a thief who in the forest, he takes and gives all the booty to the family, and the family enjoys it. But when he said, can you share the sins of that booty? They all said, no, sins are yours. We want the goods.
Only the goods.
Yes.
Isn't that the backdrop of the great Valmiki? Yes, you're right. Yeah, I was almost reminded of that to narrate, but correct, Vijayji. So we are developing an attachment to any attachment is unnecessary. A true sannyasi, here he says, in Brahman, having he whose actions offered them to Brahman. In Brahman, he has resigned all his actions. All his actions are dedicated, placed, or fixed on Brahman. and one who lives with that loftiest ideal of wanting to attain realization. And whenever I get a chance, whenever there's some discussion, I keep saying my goal is to get to that state. I want to get to that state of Brahman. Is there any harm in saying that, Hariji? Do you have an objection if I say that I want to attain Brahman, sir? Moshmi, do you have an objection if I have said that I want to attain Brahman? Ushama, any objection? Balasubramanian, sir, any objection if I say that I want to attain that state of Brahman? If the world has no objection to it, why should I have an objection in saying the truth? Is there any harm in you saying that you want to get to the truth? Is there any harm? So is it not possible to say that I want to get to that state of Brahman? Is there any harm in it? There is no harm in merely repeating it. Mechanical repetition. Even you may not feel it, you may not mean it, but at least say it. Na? Someday the thought of Brahman will start resonating it as a purpose in your life. Just the mere fact of saying, the four aphorisms, the four aphorisms. The first is Prajnanam Brahma. Prajnanam Brahma means, okay, are you all aware of the four aphorisms? Only two. Conveniently, you only forgot two. Hariji, can you please capture them if you can? The great Mahavakyas. Okay, where is that Mahaguru? Ramana Garu? Ramana Garu is our Mahaguru. Guru Garu Japan sir. Mahavakya means Japan sir. Ramana Garu.
Aham Brahmasmi.
Aham Brahmasmi.
Tattvamasi.
Tattvamasi.
I don't recollect, sir. That
only two. So balance two, we'll ask Rajima. She knows that, isn't it? In fact,
Aitena Brahma.
No. So the four aphorisms in the order of how you should understand it. The first is Prajnanam Brahma. Prajnanam Brahma, which means consciousness is Brahman. Which means consciousness is the reality. This is known as Lakshana Vakya. Lakshana Vakya means a statement of fact that Brahman alone is the reality. Brahman is the consciousness. Prajnanam Brahma, which means consciousness is Brahman, is a Lakshana Vakya, means a statement of fact. Second is Aham. No. What is second? Tat Tvam Asi. The second aphorism is Tat Tvam Asi, which means that thou art, you are that. Tat Tvam Asi, that thou art, you are that, is known as Upadesha Vakya, a statement of advice. A guru is telling their student, you are that Prajnanam Brahma, you are the truth. You are not this limited individual ego, vulnerable to the world, man. You are the truth. Can't you declare, can't you announce yourself to the world that I am the truth? Can't you think that I am the truth? Why do you think yourself to be, expose yourself to the fluctuations of the world and suffer the consequences? Say, no, I'm not this. What did we not chant in the Atma Bodha? Tad Brahman Ishkalamaham Nacha Bhuta Sangha. I am that Brahman, not this assemblage of elements. That is the Upadesha Vakya, statement of advice. The third is Ayam Atma Brahma. Ayam Atma Brahma. This Atman is that Brahman. This limited self is that totality, the consciousness, is known as the Abhyasa Vakya, the statement of practice. So every day when you go out for a walk in the morning, every time you are taking a walk, every step you take, you say, Ayam Atma Brahma. Ayam Atma Brahma. So half an hour you walk, all through your mind, you only, perhaps you have uttered that phrase, Ayam Atma Brahma, let's say 100 times or 200 times or 500 times. So the thought of Brahman, that this individual self is that grand totality, is that truth, is that consciousness, is the abhyasa. So there's no harm in you asserting the higher, and in the process you're negating the lower. And when you have done sufficiently, you come to the fourth aphorism, which is Aham Brahmasmi, which is a statement of experience. It's an Anubhava Vakya. Anubhavam. I have that experience that I have attained the truth. I am that self. So first is a statement of fact, which is a Prajnanam Brahma. Second is a statement of advice, Tat Tvamasi. Third is a statement of practice, Ayam Atma Brahma. Fourth is a statement of experience, Aham Brahmasmi. So in the 10th verse, the sannyasi is practicing the thought, everything, every action, every perception, every emotion, every thought, everything is only dedicated Brahmani Adhaya. He seeks shelter under Brahman. Whatever he does, whatever he doesn't do, everything is done only as an oblation, as an offering to Brahman. And when one does that, he lives a life with no sin, is not tainted by sin, because he's abandoned attachment. He is not tainted by sin, and he lives a life like a lotus leaf in water. Oh my God. So the sannyasi, what is the difference between a jnani and a sannyasi? Jnani is enlightened. Sannyasi is the last stage. A little short of realization is sannyasi. So the last stages of a sannyasi, and once you cross that, is a jnani. So jnani is operating from the state of Brahman. Sannyasi is not yet reached Brahman, but he's envisioned Brahman as the primary purpose of everything he does. That's the difference between a jnani and a sannyasi. Difference between 8 and 9 and 10 is he's already merged there. This person is still not yet merged, but everything he does is only Brahmani Adhaya. Now, when you work, what is the Adhaya you take? What is it that you're offering your actions towards? You've got to find out. Ask yourself, do you have a goal in life? Or are you doing for your own self-benefit? So is it for Atma Karanat? Or is there a yajna? Is there a goal or a purpose in life? And the highest of all goal is realization. Okay, I'll come back to it and I'll touch on a few other concepts here before we move further. Okay. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.